Chapter 12 of It's the Thought That Counts by Dr. David Hamilton. This chapter is called DNA 2. We learned earlier that our higher selves create the subatomic particles that form our atoms, which then go on to form our proteins, enzymes, and DNA, as well as the entire physical structure of our bodies. DNA is the genetic blueprint that determines what we look like, but I believe that the higher self provides the mental blueprint that precedes it, that determines the physical structure of the DNA. Many people believe that the mind is the product of chemical interactions in the brain. Indeed, scientific studies have shown that alterations to the brain cause perception and behavioural changes. But this is only half the story. The mind is influenced by chemical interactions in the brain, but it originates beyond biology. I believe that the spirit flows through the body. Its flow is affected by the state of the body, giving us the impression that it is a product of biology. I also believe that our genetic blueprint acts as a filter that allows a certain intensity of spirit, brackets higher self, to influence the body and mind. The higher self chooses a genetic filter so that a life may be experienced within a certain context. We still have free will, of course. Good. Life then is a bit like a painting. The higher self chooses the canvas and the colours, but we create the picture. The mental blueprint of the higher self condenses into the chosen colours of the DNA. Its thought patterns, brackets vibrations, condense into particles that forms patterns that organise into matter that become genes of DNA. Prior to the vibrations, there is stillness, just like still water when there is no wind. In this state, nothing exists except perfect stillness. But then an idea arises, and just as a pebble dropped into water produces waves, it forms vibrations in the field, which then condense to form the particles that eventually produce the image of the idea. These vibrations are the mental blueprint that determines what you will look like, and the condensed particles organize themselves accordingly so that the appropriate genes are present in your DNA when you are no more than a single cell in the womb. These genes are predisposed to switch on and off so that you can grow into the image held by your higher self. The new science of string theory, which many scientists believe could be the theory of everything, or at least point towards it, also talks of vibrations. These are likened to the vibrations of a violin string and are considered to be the real nature of subatomic particles. In other words, subatomic particles are not solid but are really vibrations. Therefore, since subatomic particles make up everything, we can say that vibrations make up everything. I believe that vibrating strings ultimately represent the intentions of God or the equivalent in other spiritual and religious traditions, and that some also represent the intentions of our higher selves. The genes that we are born with are principally the result of the choice of our higher selves, but they are also inherited from our parents. There is no contradiction there. Similarities probably exist in families because the higher selves has chosen to be similar. It may be that our human families are families of higher selves who think alike and so form similar vibrations. What we see as similar genes in accordance with the law of genetics and inheritance may be no more than the end product of a creative series of events that originated with similar ideas. I believe that each higher self chooses particular genes within the framework of what is possible within such laws. We are born, therefore, with certain genes that are predisposed to switch on at certain times throughout our lives to make our bodies look as they do and work as they do and to lead us into the types of experience designed by our higher selves. You could say that the instructions for our unique mental, physical, and spiritual growth, the mental blueprints, are imprinted onto our DNA. Anyone can become aware of some of these mental blueprints or imprints, as you might call them, particularly the ones relating to our purpose in life. Do you ever feel that you have a purpose that you are just not carrying out? Such feelings are the blueprints of the higher self. I believe that carrying out or living your purpose allows the maximum flow of the higher self through the body, and that is why people who are doing so tend to feel joyful most of the time. Your purpose doesn't need to be something big. As people begin to embrace spiritual concepts, they quite often feel that their purpose is to change the world single-handedly. But this is usually just their newfound awareness of the awesome power of consciousness available to them. From my own experience, there is often an increased flow of energy through the body at this time, and there is undoubtedly a new program of genes switching on and off. Your purpose may be subtle, or it may have an obviously huge impact on the world. Many people's purpose is to bring children into the world. Others choose to act, write books, sing, dance, cook, clean, to heal, to be peaceful, to cause chaos, to lead or to follow. Parents will usually notice that their children have certain abilities from an early age. They might be highly intelligent or great at sports, creative, good mimics, or they might act like little doctors or nurses or teachers. Some might be fascinated by cars or why they work the way they do. This is no accident. It is their purpose beginning to express itself. In fact, we usually have more than one purpose. As we fulfill one, the next takes precedence. Why not ask your higher self what your purpose is? It may come to you in a flash of inspiration, or you may find events just nudge you into doing whatever it is you are meant to do. Conscious evolution. Vibrations are consistent throughout the physical world. The Earth rotates throughout the Sun, forming the cycle, vibration, of 1 year. The Moon rotates about the Earth, forming the cycle of 1 month. And the Earth rotates on its axis, forming the cycle of 1 day. Our bodies also work in cycles. In the science of genetics, it is well known that many genes switch on and off in waves according to clock rhythms and cycles. For example, the genes that are involved in sleep. Our growth is also determined by cycles. The brain, for instance, undergoes cyclic spurts of growth at birth, and approximately at ages 1, 4, 7, 11, 15, and 21, each spurt involves waves of gene expression. The growth of the central nervous system is also shown to take place through periodic waves of gene expression. Puberty and menopause are the results of long-term cycles. I believe that our internal body cycles are also ultimately a product of the higher selves through vibrations. These vibrations will ultimately be the reason why certain genes are predisposed to switch on and off at certain times. The very idea of the human race was once a vibration in the stillness of the field. You could call it the vibration of the human race. This vibration ensures consistency in human DNA. It explains why most of us have 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, and a mouth. What we call serious genetic mutations and the associated deformities are not mistakes. In fact, they must be the results of decisions by higher selves. A person who is physically excuse me, or mentally different, whether due to a genetic difference or otherwise, should therefore never be considered less than anyone else. I believe that it takes a brave and enlightened soul to choose genetic characteristics that cause it to be labelled different in unenlightened times. What is normal is not what is right, it is just what most higher selves have chosen, no more or less. The human race has evolved over millions of years, so the vibration of the human race has been constantly changing in small ways. Vibrations can become either faster or slower, in other words, higher or lower. According to some spiritual traditions, our collective vibrations is in fact speeding up, which we see as tolerance, kindness, and compassion flooding through the world in greater amounts than ever before. As we embrace these values, the collective mental and emotional climate changes, sending intentions to the point where vibrations condense into particles. They then resonate with the vibration of the human race in much the same way that a tuning fork will cause a guitar string to vibrate to its tone. And as they resonate with it, they begin to raise it to a higher vibration, just as a large pendulum entrains smaller ones to its rhythm. Since we can influence the collective mental and emotional climate in many ways, this gives us a degree of influence upon our own evolution. As we collectively make choices based upon spiritual principles like tolerance, kindness, and compassion, we produce higher vibrations that in turn entrain the collective vibration to a higher frequency. Each time the string of humanity plays a higher note. It goes the other way too. As the collective vibration increases in frequency, it inspires us, influences the choice we make, so that even more tolerance, kindness, and compassion flow through the world. Look at the world, it is really obvious. And each time the vibrations shift, it is not only our thoughts and emotions that are affected, biology must shift too. Of course, I'm not talking of obvious physical changes, although these might await us in the very distant future. I'm referring to minor alterations in which genes are on and off, and some minor mutations that occur regularly and naturally, leading to relatively minor biological changes. These will mirror the way in which we view each other and our place in the world. It must be happening in people alive at present, and this may explain some of the changes we are seeing. Some people, for instance, are finding that their bodies no longer tolerate old eating habits and are developing unexplained allergies to foods that are unhealthy. Others find themselves experiencing greater psychological stress as the new vibration brings to the surface mental and emotional issues that need resolving. Some people are experiencing stress-related illnesses as they resist the inner urge to embrace their life's purpose. Others are simply feeling better and better every day. All the apparently negative psychological and physical experiences are simply psychological and biological adjustments to the higher vibration and may be viewed as healing in progress. What is also really interesting is that the higher vibration will also influence people's DNA in the future because that DNA will condense from the vibration of the human race. So if we choose more tolerance, kindness, compassion, and peace, our children will be born with a greater predisposition towards love, peace, and spiritual growth. And because this will affect the activation of some genes, the predisposition will even be written into the physical structure of the brain and will therefore also be manifest in the body. In this way, our choices today affect the future health and state of the world. Each of us, therefore, has a great responsibility, not only to ourselves, but to our children. We can give them a chance to live in a world free of poverty, war, and injustice, a world filled with sharing, cooperation, tolerance, compassion, achievement, education, kindness, and peace. I've heard stories, and I believe some of them because it makes sense in the context of what I've written here, that a number of children are being born with a higher sense of immunity to some of our most serious diseases. This may be explained in purely genetic terms, but consciousness precedes biology. If the vibration level of humanity had evolved, say, 20 points in the last 20 years, then children being born now would have slightly different DNA in terms of which genes are on and off from children born 20 years ago. I'm quite sure that scientists could find ways to verify this. As we collectively gain a wider spiritual understanding, we are slowly transcending old mental and emotional habits. It follows, therefore, that we are probably also developing physical resistance to some of the diseases that collectively mirrored these old habits. Many of us may have developed an immunity that we may never realize we have. Researchers looking for chemical or biological cures for some diseases may need to look no further than healthy people. Group illnesses. Epidemics can spread quickly around the world, but it can be the mind more than anything that helps in their spread. Most of us secretly believe that we will catch whatever disease is going. This is aided by advertisement that proclaim 1 in 3 people will catch so-and-so in their lifetime. Of course, advertisements of this nature are not intended to cause disease. It is the exact opposite. Drug manufacturers and research and development scientists are trying to help sick people. Their advertisements are not created with any conscious aware of the disease suggestions that they give to people. They simply use current statistics. But statistics can be misleading if they are not fully understood. They can create a local or global emotional climate that inspires people to believe they will contract a certain disease. Then their body's biochemistry mirrors their beliefs, switching on virus and bacteria already present in the body, or generating ghost symptoms, or even causing them to unconsciously call out to airborne pathogens, so the statistics have a chance of becoming self-fulfilling. Most of us have traces of most virus and bacteria, even the deadliest ones in our bodies, yet they lie dormant, doing no harm. In fact, they probably play a cameo role in keeping health and balance in the body. Believing a disease suggestion might, however, switch them on, turning a usually harmless virus into a deadly one. In some cases, then, it might not be so much the virus that is the disease as the thoughts, emotions, and beliefs that activate it. On a global scale, the spread of an epidemic could be intensified by the mental and emotional patterns of an entire nation or culture. This might be one of the reasons why families and groups of people sharing similar attitudes and beliefs often develop the same illnesses. There are, of course, many direct causes for diseases that are unrelated to conscious thoughts and feelings. For example, diet, toxins, poisons, genetic inheritance, transmitted viruses and bacteria, and even electromagnetic fields, to name just a few. Consciousness does not always play a large role, just as there is not always a large placebo effect in the treatment of some illnesses. But however large or small, it cannot be ignored. Another aspect of the role of consciousness is that collective thoughts can affect people all over the world. So our collective mental and emotional patterns might unconsciously project an illness or the symptoms of an illness worldwide. For instance, atmospheric pollution and the destruction of oxygen-producing rainforests are currently damaging the lungs of the planet. On an unconscious level, we are all aware of this because the knowledge vibrates the web. In an individual, consistent thoughts of damaged lungs might bring about such a condition or the symptoms of the condition in that person. So collectively, we might expect to see an increase in the number of respiratory diseases, asthma or TB, all over the world. Most of the people with these diseases would not have attracted the illness through their conscious thought of their own, but the collective mental and emotional climate would have played a part. In some way, there might be a link between the reduction of the planet's biodiversity due to the man-made extinction of species, which damaged the immune system of the planet, and an increase in the number of people developing suppressed immune systems, allergies, and related diseases. Okay. Again, the conscious and unconscious awareness of these events can be projected outwards and show up in people anywhere in the world, since we are all connected. And again, those affected did not attract the disease through any fault of their own, though their higher self undoubtedly had a reason for them to have developed it. Just as we attract diseases, however, we should also be able to deactivate them. Perhaps we can collectively generate a positive placebo effect based on the belief that we are healthy. Maybe the media could help. With faith, we would develop a degree of mental and therefore physical immunity to new or existing diseases. As mentioned earlier, as a consequence of our evolution in consciousness, some people may already be psychologically and therefore physically immune to some diseases, and even if they contract them through the air, they will immediately neutralize them. Such individuals are likely to exist. It is just that we are not generally aware of them, and neither are they aware of their own immunities. There is a habitual tendency in many of us only to notice something when it goes wrong, and to give little attention to things that are going right. We often focus more on disease than health, but we get what we concentrate on. So it will be better to concentrate more on health and the reasons why people are healthy. Our health and our world is in our hands, so let us appreciate each other and be kind to each other, and collectively we can make our world into an even more beautiful place. And that made me think of Wim Hof. He overcome being injected with something that could poison him with his mind. And there were scientists around to prove it at the time. It's amazing, isn't it?